Good morning, everybody. I received a question on Quora.com from Yitzchak L. I like the name. My name's Yitzchak. And he asked, how long will it take for science to catch up to the truth of the Torah? This is a very difficult question to approach. From the tenor of the question, I feel that it's something that I've been personally interested in pretty much throughout my frum life, which is most of my life at this point. Certainly all of my adult life and all of my teenage life, all of my pretty much, if I want to say I'm frum, you could say it means feel rishis and veinige mitzvahs. Like the I believe it was the Rabshitzer, or maybe it was Shinavarav. I don't remember who it was who said that. Mistama was the Rabshitzer, and the Shinavarav repeated it. You probably heard from his father, heard it from the Rabshitzer. From the sons of Rav heard it. It means that have a lot of evil and very few mitzvahs, very few good deeds. But in any event, that's Rosh Tevis Frum. In any event. Being within this Orthodox Jewish world, more or less, trying my best for 24 years now. It's something that I've been convinced of that is true, something I was taught in yeshiva. Meaning, an example would be something that I heard in yeshiva was the concept of the nefesh bahamis, which is something we find in Kabbalah, and Rosh Hashiva, Moshe Lazarus Shlita, the big Rosh Hashiva in the big Dayan in Eretz Yisrael. He said that eventually science will be able to discover that which we call the nefesh bahamis. And my understanding is that it's the same thing that the Chinese call qi, sometimes pronounced gi, and that this would be an example of something along those lines. But that's a very minor aspect of our Torah tradition, to be honest. Meaning, what is there? This is the real question. What is there that science has to catch up with Torah with? Science cannot quantify the Isser and Heter of Shabbos and Kashrus, Taras and Mishpacha, in a halachic sense. It might reach, and so meaning, I'll say, what are we going to say? Science is eventually going to discover that the Earth is literally, 5,781 years old, and then we're going to say, and we'll say, Adam Arishon was that long ago, which is generally how we understand it. That Adam Arishon was 5,781 years old. Well, Chazal say something about the Torah existing for 1,000 generations. It says so in David Civil Elef Dor. It's something that's already in Tanakh. It's in Tehillim. It's in the Bible. It's something that the Torah was something that was commanded for 1,000 generations, which is between 20 to 30,000 years. And it seems that means that there, in Chazal, that before Adam Arishon, there was another species of human, perhaps, according to some interpretations of Chazal, based in biblical text, that there were 20 or 30,000 years of another human species that led up to what probably the distinction that science recognizes between Homo sapiens and some common ancestors that we broke off from at some point, well, still science would say that it was Homo sapiens 20 or 30,000 years ago. But that something happened around 5,000 or 6,000 years ago that society began to develop. That's what the scientists tell us now, meaning that's something. So that's around where we find Adam Harishon being in a literal read of the Torah. So, but the question is, when we do these types of mental gymnastics, what are we exactly doing? Because there's a famous mashal, there's a famous parable, I believe it was the Brisker Rav said, someone, a woman in the community made a mantala, made a cover for a Sefer Torah, for a Torah scroll. And it was a little too short, didn't cover the scroll all the way. So the question was, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to cut short the scroll? Obviously you can't do that, that would be sacrilege. Or do we make the cover bigger? And it's the same thing that we have to, that we should apply here in our approach to Torah. The Torah is immutable. The Torah is, we cannot cut out anything from the Torah. Science is by definition something that's mutable, something that is discussing things that are hidden, that we don't know about, and trying to come to conclusions based on observations that we do know about, and making those assertions and using the scientific method through control groups and comparing and contrasting between what we have through experimentation, making educated guesses, we call theories, and coming to some kind of a conclusion, which sometimes is conclusive and sometimes is not. So, with that being said, science and Torah are two different realms, because Torah is something that is immutable. However, within the realm of that immutable Torah, there's a lot of research that can be done within it, meaning we're not sola scriptura, born again Protestants. We are, we as Jews who follow Chazal and understand that that's what Deuteronomy is telling us, not to deviate left or right from that which they teach us. So that's a scriptural mandate to follow the teachings of our sages. We have to have that oscillating consciousness, as Rabbi Bar Tzadok uses, as Seichel Tanuah. I think that's his own chiddush, that terminology, to walk that tightrope between what is poetry and what is prose. Meaning we, in our Orthodox circles, we, I believe rightfully so, have accepted the Yud Gimel Ikrim of the Rambam to be our Ikrei Amunah, to be essentially our dogmas, or at least the closest thing to dogma that exists in Torah. Meaning to say, if you deny one of the 13 principles of our faith, in a broad sense, you would be a heretic. Someone accused me recently of heresy, and that hurts very much. You want to say I'm a choite, taka choite. You want to say I'm a sinner. I am a sinner, but I strive very much to have a muna pshuta v'shleima, to believe with the perfect, with ganze Gläuben, the muna shleima, in the 13 principles of faith. And even though I recognize there's the professor here in Scranton. I forgot his name now. Mark Shapiro, who wrote a book about how really all the Yud Gimel Ikrim might not be Ikrei Emunah, but like my Rav growing up, Rav Meir Belitsky, Zeichet Tzadik HaKodesh L'Vrocha, taught us that no one denies that these are kosher Jewish beliefs. The only question is, are they dogmas? That's the term that he actually used. Are they Ikrei Emunah? And he didn't say that they're the closest thing to dogma. He recognized that Judaism is a dogmatic religion, and that just the question is, do we have the more broad understanding of the Sefer Ikrim that has only 3 Ikrei Emunah, but essentially all of the Yud Gimel Ikrim fall into one of those 3 categories, so it's not really a stira. That Harav Yosef Albo in the Sefer Ikrim has only 3 dogmas, but really essentially all the 13 of Maimonides fall into those 3 categories, and so there's no contradiction there. But so what is it that we? What is it that I've said that goes against any of the Yud Gimel Ikrim of the Rambam? I explain it that it's not maybe black and white the way a lot of people understand. Meaning to say that when the Rambam says, and he specifically says that or the way that it's expressed in the Siddur, which is even though it's not verbatim from the Divrei HaRambam, it's not verbatim from the words that Maimonides writes in his commentary in the Mishnah and Sanhedrin, where we derive the Yud Gimel Ikrim, where we derive the 13 dogmas. But nonetheless, the way that it's expressed in our liturgical readings are extremely poignant. Meaning we speak of the Bari Baruch Hu, we speak of the Creator, the Blessed Creator, and that the essence of the Creator, that He's only one, and He has no form and no shape, and is only one and is indivisible, and so forth, and also that there's no one else worthy to pray to, and that's a very important aspect. And we have in our traditions, however, things that appear like prayer to angels, and yet the answer must be that either one of 2 things. You have specifically, forget about Shalom Aleichem, which is much more well known, because that is clearly not a prayer. To say Barchuni b'Shalom, bless me with peace, is not a prayer. It's a request for a blessing, just like you request from any human being a blessing. However, if it were a prayer, it could be read Barchuni b'Shalom Malachei Shalom Malachei Yesharis Malachei Elyon. There's a different nusach, not Mi Melech Malchei Mlochim, but the nusach of the Sfardim, which actually Satmar Schusi Galenu used, was Melech Malchei Mlochim, not Mi Melech Malchei Mlochim, but Melech Malchei Mlochim. What's the nafkamina? What's the difference there? Is that the what it says? Meaning we ask that if you say Mi Melech Malchei Mlochim, it's obvious that we are petitioning the angels to bless us, the angels who come from the King of Kings, from God. However, if you follow the Nusach Esfardim, which, like I said, Satmar Rav himself, even though it's not printed like that in the Zmiris Divrei Yol, but in the commentary it mentions that the Satmar Rav himself, he didn't say Mi Melech Malchei Mlochim, he said Melech Malchei Mlochim. So that means that we're addressing specifically either it's a comment making a statement that the King of Kings is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, is the Holy One, bless me, He is God. That's the King of Kings. It's a separate statement which would fit in with Shalom Aleichem and Bayachim L'Shalom and Seischim L'Shalom. There's 2 separate things. That's basically is a comma that he was saying that the angels are. We welcome the angels, and then we make a statement that the King of Kings is God. It's two separate things. But when we're asking a Barchuni l'shalom malachi shalom or Barchuni l'chaim tovim l'shalom, whatever it is, malachi shalom malachi shoros malach elyon, and instead of saying mi melech malchi amlochim, saying melech malchi amlochim, that it could be understand that we're asking God to bless us with angels and bless us with peace, bless us or with good life and peace, a different nusach, which was also Summer of nusach was, and then Malachei Shalom, Malachei Sharis, the angels of peace, and the administering angels, Melech Malachei Melachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu, meaning we're asking, please God, bless us with angels, send us the angels, like it says, Ki Malachav Yitzav Alach L'Shmorecha B'chol Derechecha, that God commands His angels to guard you in all your ways, in Psalm 91, which was yesterday's Chok. Anyway, that we're going to put aside, even though I explained it a little bit more than I wanted to. There's a tefillah neirah me'eris Rabbeinu Tam. It's printed, especially in Hasidic Sidurim. An amazing, awesome prayer from Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam was, of course, from Balei Tosfos, Rashi's grandson, and we pay attention to his opinion in halacha very much, right? His chumras in halacha, particularly. But we have this tefillah neirah me'es Rabbeinu Tam. There's an amazing, awesome prayer from Rabbeinu Tam, where it says Bakasha Michkem Michol Rafal Gabriel. I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but it's a petition to the angels, Michael and Gabriel and Raphael. How can we petition the angels? And again, it's the same way we petition the government, the same way we petition, not that they have any independent power. It's a petition is not necessarily a prayer. That's the answer that we have to give there. Or we could say the Rabbeinu Tam didn't write it, and it was written by some maskil or something. I don't know. That's another possibility. I never really seen any discussion particular about this, but it seems obvious that we have to answer this somehow. How does this stem with this Iker Amunah of let's follow the law, say that we shouldn't pray to anybody but the Creator. And so too, when discussing these issues of Avodah Zarah that exist and that I interact with at work, what are we dealing with there? Are we dealing with obviously these beings that are venerated by these pagan groups, and we have Rishonim who say there's no Avodah Zarah today. So how could it be there's no Avodah Zarah today when you have these pagans who venerate these various beings? And again, we could maybe put that answer along the lines of we said Alan Watts. He said that the Hindu deities, it's better for us to refer to them as angels than as gods. And the Rambam has, with the different species of angels, he has Elohim, B'nai Elohim, he has gods and sons of God, or sons of gods, as species of angels. We're not allowed to worship these beings, we're not allowed to pray to them, but they exist nonetheless, according to the Rambam. So there's a distinction between a Bari Baruch Hu, between the blessed Creator, and these other beings that He created that are not worthy of worship, and it's absolutely forbidden to bow down to them, absolutely forbidden to offer incense or so forth to them, because that's Avodah Zarah. and among these other things, and also not only are there angels like that, but obviously there are demons as well that present themselves as these false gods that these other religions worship, and they are committing a sin of avodah zarah. But how does that fit in theologically? Are they all just figments of the imagination? And then what is a figment of the imagination? It's also a creation of God. That God put these imaginations, and again it comes to the Jungian archetypes. And it seems like I'm getting off subject talking about this, but I'm not, because here again, Carl Jung was a scientist. He wasn't Jewish. He was a big fan of Judaism, a big fan of Kabbalah. He uses Kabbalistic imagery in his writings. But he also recognizes some latent anti-Semitism within himself. A fascinating person, Carl Jung. And Jung scientifically recognized that there is something some spiritual world that he was able to quantify in what he calls the collective subconscious. That different people from different cultures and different religions and different backgrounds are all experiencing the same thing, and what's being presented to them as mental illness. These are the angels and the demons and all these other things that exist in God's creation and another dimensional realm or plane. And that is what it is. So that's the question. When we get these answers from quantum physics, or if there's some kind of UFO or other or UAP disclosure, is that going to demonstrate, that these beings are angels or demons or other things that exist in these other realms? And do these things point to things that not only Judaism, Torah knows, but all religions know? But still, there's something unique about the truth of Torah, because Torah was revealed publicly, the national revelation. So what does that mean? Are we waiting for a time machine to go back to Maimon Har Sinai? What exactly are we talking about here? What is the major difference here, between science and Torah? They're two different realms. When I was younger, yes, I wanted to see the creationists, and I love Rabbi Victor Miller, and I have tremendous devotion to Rabbi Victor Miller. I don't live up to his ideals, obviously, but he himself often told his Balabatim that, for Shalom Bayis and for other things, it's kedai maybe not always to live up to ideals, and as long as you're not violating an actual Isser Torah, there's a time and a place for things. I admit that it's not right for me to watch movies. Sometimes, it's the same thing. You shouldn't listen to non-Jewish music and things, but I remember, it's an actual Isser. I mean, it's an Isser if you're looking at stockless, so you look away. If there are other problems, it's Bittul Torah 100%. I'll tell you the truth. Sometimes I have a movie playing. I'm learning Mishnayos while the movie's playing, just because I have a problem. I recognize that. Is that heresy? No, it's a problem that I have to work on and grow out of. And maybe I won't, but I'll work on it. And sometimes we go deeper, sometimes we go back and forth. Verweist. I don't know. I'm not going and saying it's okay. And the same thing. There's a Rosh Hashiva who I talk to regularly, and we make our conversations public, some of them. And he told me the same thing. He watches movies, he admits to it, he's open about it, but he also admits that it's 100% usher for many, many reasons. And it's just, and he can make all kinds of excuses for Shalom Bayis and this and that, but he himself appreciates it also. it's part of trying to be balanced in the world and recognizing that we're not perfect, and trying to do tshuva and recognizing, is it total sheretz b'yadai? Maybe, I don't know. Does that mean you stop learning Torah? Does it mean you stop davening 3 times a day? Does it mean that you stop dressing like a Jew? Not that I'm dressed right now so Yiddish, but it's just I'm still covering my head and have tzitzis on. I still have a beard and payas and shave it off just because I watch movies once in a while. I don't know. Because I know the truth is, Satmarov told Rabbi Avram Tversky, Zichron Levracha, Satmarov's Chassid Aleinu told Rabbi Avram Tversky, he promised him Olam Haba if he doesn't wear a Chassidish Levush, because he's afraid that some Chassidish and Galite are gonna go to college because they see Rabbi Avram Tversky going to college. It's a story I heard. I don't know if it's really true. So it's hard to say, one thing I know is neither Reb Aaron or Reb Zalman Leib ever told me not to wear Chassidish Levush. I never asked them if I should. They never told me not to. And the same thing, Kalavar Rebbe never told me not to. And one person who made me discourage it was Rav Moshe Weinberger, right? So I'm being very candid right now with this, but at the point in what I'm saying here is that, yes, when I was younger, I kind of probably felt like someday, all of the creationist science is going to be proven. The same thing, I'm very hopeful. I feel pretty much that I know that Joe Biden stole the election, but nonetheless, the powers that be, the way that the Electoral College works and so forth, there's no way, at least until 2022, if we can, make Donald Trump the Speaker of the House, and it'll be 2023 by that time that happens. But I'm saying make Donald Trump the Speaker of the House, and whatever else, impeach Biden and Harris, and then maybe if Biden makes it that long, or maybe just impeach Harris, and that's the only way that we'll have Donald Trump back in the White House before 2025, after the 2024 election. And a lot of damage could be done by then. But even though we all pretty much know that it was stolen, but there's no way to fix it, because it's the Congress is not going to act. With the current Congress is not going to change that, and the Supreme Court is scared that the current president and Congress could pack the court. So it's the same type of thing. We all dream. When are they going to come to this, to realize that creationism is true and this and that? But then you get a little older and you learn a little bit more, and you realize the Ken Ham type of creationism, which, even though I love Rabbi Victor Miller, and Rabbi Bar Tzadok also loves Rabbi Victor Miller, but is it really is that really pshat? It's hard to say. My holy Zeta, the Chavos Yor, said, because I remember someone asked, it wasn't my Maggid Shir, they asked Rabbi Parnas, who I really didn't have much shaykhis to when I was at Lander College, but I remember one Shabbos he was there, and they had question and answer. They asked him about this question about creationism, and he said, "Ein mikra yotzei midei pshutai," right? But in my holy Zeta, the Chavos Yor, in his incredible but difficult and very cryptic sefer, the Mark Shisha, I'm sure maybe he says it other places, I haven't seen it yet, but he talks about what does it mean, Ein mikra yotzei midei pshutai, and he said, we know that pshat in Torah, that when it says scripture, doesn't go out of its simple meaning, right? that we don't lose the simple meaning of Scripture, but we know that the plain translation of the words of Scripture is not how Chazal always interprets it. Meaning there are clear places where when it says Mimachras HaShabbos, the day after the Sabbath, we know that it means Mimachras HaPesach. Even okay, we can point to Sefer Yehoshua for that, but and there are many other examples of that. I'm trying to think of the one that was in last week's parsha. I think there was one recently. May Nida, I think, was the one that he brought there. May Nida. What does it mean? The waters of menstruation? No, that's what does that have to do with the paraduma? So obviously, however Chazal explain us what's pshat. Pshat is what Chazal teaches. Pshat, not that. So the emes of Torah is Torah's min hashamayim. That's when the Yud Gimel Ikrim. Is the emes of Torah that 6 days or 6 24-hour periods? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's certainly not heretical to say that it is 6 24-hour periods, but it's probably just it's not heretical to say it's not, as long as we believe that God is the one who's doing it. So it's still within the realm of the Yud Gimel Ikrim. And the same thing, really. Again, I believe, you have scientific, teachings like Gerald Schroeder, who I had a hard time understanding really what he's talking about, but he says, like we said at the beginning, we're not trying to fit Torah into science, we're trying to fit science into Torah, but there are Torah sources that say that the world is billions of years old. So how do we reconcile these within the Torah perspective? And so he used science to show that 6 billion and 5,000 are really the same thing. And it's a matter of perspective. I don't really understand it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not I'm certainly not an MIT guy like him. It is what it is. They even referenced him once on MST3K. But of Shach, that's what we're holding. It's so will science ever catch up? When Mashiach comes, it won't be science anymore. That's the thing, because Torah is revelation, and science is science. Science is about the things we don't know about, and Torah is the stuff that we do know about. Just maybe we don't understand. Maybe only the big Talmid Chachamim understand, but certain simple things we all understand. But there's a lot of politics in science too. That's a big reason why we don't have. The government knows all about the extraterrestrials and that they are interdimensional beings. They're essentially the Shainim and the Malachim and things that we know from Torah. But for political reasons, they're not going to tell us that. Maybe eventually they will, but there's a big issues there. So that's why I'm not so hopeful. I was more hopeful, but will someday we be recognizing the Nefesh Bahamas, like my Rosh Hashiva said? Mistama. I don't know when. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment.